Leave your car at home. Walk and bike on the free gym of active transportation is what the cool kids tell you to do. And why not? Montreal is the cycling capital of North America, according to the Insecure Urbanist Institute.
But Montreal is not just the agglomeration de Montreal, it's a metropolis, with half the population off in the yonders. There are 27 points of entry onto it for them. Bridges, tunnels, and even tunnel bridges.
But these bridges ain't fit.
Only 11 let you take leg-based transportation at all. Of those, only 3 have a dedicated bike lane.
Like this iconic yet perilous pont.
Despite a sidewalk widening in 2001 and its recent opening in winters, this crossing sucks. The railing added in 2003 to stop suicides creates crashes. It's hard to use the whole path when a wobble in one direction can hook a handlebar and hurl you into the oncoming lane. Which isn't hard, record numbers of people are using it on all forms of transport. So you weave amongst crowds of strollers and sports cyclists, staying mindful of the multiple blind spots that tourists, who have no idea of the danger they are in, spring from and experience their life flashing before their eyes.
Jesus. At the halfway point, regular crowds of people cross what is essentially a highway off-ramp, especially the very sober festival attendees that spill out of Parc Jean Drapeau at night, which is another dimension of the problem. This path is 15 deafening, teeth-gritting minutes of tailpipe-sucking stress as trucks and trailers tear past within arm's reach. It all feels dangerous because it is, but at least it exists. The South Shore doesn't have that many options. Route roll call.
You have the more scenic options of Estacade de Pont Champlain and Pont de la Concorde, which both rely on this busy seaway lock that lifts a route out of existence multiple times a day. You also have the new Samuel de Champlain Bridge. And that's it. 4 options. But what about this little guy down here?
Well, this is the Mercier Bridge. Half of the bridge is controlled by the feds, the other half by Quebec. And there is a path, but only on the feds' half. It's been there since 2016. You can still drive past it and see the gate they put up, shaming the Quebec government to finally add a path on their side of the bridge.
Because this is what you far too often see from a bridges owned by le Ministère de Transport. Nothing at all. Quebec has a legacy of car-dependent infrastructure, all bridges built in the past that, unlike the Fed and municipal bridges, are still waiting for their upgrade. Montreal's car-only club includes Honoré Mercier, Charles de Gaulle, Papineau-Leblanc, Médéric Martin, Louis Besson, and de l'Autot. These are all toll bridges for pedestrians and cyclists. The price to cross the car-only club? 1 car only. Sure, you can attach your bike to the front of some buses, but holding up everyone on a bus each day to attach and remove a bike is so excruciatingly embarrassing it's kind of a last resort for many.
The new Terminus Ram station here in Saint-Anne-de-Bellevue has covered bike parking, but it's probably not going to be used by too many people from Vaudreuil-Dorion. They have to add another 5 kilometers to their trip because they can't cross at Les Lautot. Or right here in Parc des Arbres. Just over there is Laval, not even 200 meters away. But let's say you want to walk there. Well, head downriver, passing Pont Louis Besson, which is car only, and onto Pont La Chapelle. And then repeat the journey all the way back on the Laval side, turning what should be a couple of minute walk into a 24-kilometer, 5-hour hike. During the warmer months, you can go the other way and shorten the route to a mere 11 kilometers with a crossing on a ferry.
But there are opportunities to turn this situation around.
Bridges are slowly adding and improving pedestrian infrastructure. Il Bazar's bridge had a cycling path added to it in 2008 during repairs, and the Ville de Montréal is doubling the width of the pedestrian infrastructure on the new bridge. All bridges built more recently, like Olivier Charbonneau, or upgraded, like Galipeau, have pedestrian infrastructure. But there is a mediocrity problem with a lot of what we've been doing. Take Pont-Pineuf. It's currently undergoing a major rejuvenation and will be widening one side into a multi-use path. The same incremental improvement that Jacques Cartier did in 2001. But what was acceptable at the turn of a century is the bare minimum today. So despite being wider, it will probably run into similar problems well before its next upgrade. A multi-use path is okay for a low-traffic, recreational, or quieter suburban spot. But funneling commuter bike lanes and footpaths into one narrower passage down the side of a busy arterial and calling it multi-use is starting to look a little bit cheap. Pedestrians can't hear cyclists approaching in that environment, and the risk is a lot greater than being startled.
But upriver is a model for a better future.
This is the Bordeaux Railway Bridge. complete with train. Unlike walking down the side of a highway, it lets you drink in the bliss. Forget about the last pont, because this is another story. Without the noise of traffic, you can hear and signal others, making it a lot safer. And also, railway bridges don't have steep inclines either, so they're a lot easier to ride on, and you don't have that speeding issue which necessitated the installation of those gates on the Mercier Bridge. But most critically, for many people in this neighborhood, it makes walking or biking better than driving because it's more direct. In the same way that every bridge that only allows cars incentivizes driving, every bridge that only allows pedestrians incentivizes walking. This bridge here is actively promoting active transportation. And there are lots of other railway bridges onto the island that have no pedestrian infrastructure. And one of them is right here in Parc des Arbres, crying out to be a solution to our 24-kilometer, 4 or 5 hour hike to go just over there. The Ram is going in and has just finished building a second bridge across the water to service the Ile Bigras station, which frees up the existing rail bridge. Laval, Montreal and their agencies have been working with the Caisse de Dépôt to redevelop the bridge, which is now pleasingly penciled into plans. Goody! If the parties can get their act together, thousands of residents in Laval and Montreal will suddenly find not driving, but walking or biking the fastest way to get between these 2 points.
And that's critical. The roads on the island of Montreal are already clogged. We don't need to dump any more cars onto it. We need to invert the equation so our bridges go from being a reason to drive to being a reason to walk or bike.
So yes, pedestrians and bikes should be on car bridges like Louis Besson, but we should also be negotiating and funding upgrades on rail bridges like Bordeaux and Bigras to give pedestrians a more convenient commute.
It's also becoming increasingly common to just build a bridge for pedestrians. The city is looking into that here between Verdun and Ile-de-Serre.
And if those options are too expensive or difficult to negotiate, there is always another choice. New York made it recently on the historic and difficult to modify Brooklyn Bridge. They just took a car lane and made it into an active transportation lane. Not my car lane! Now hear me out. I think Montreal has a really serious contender for this option. Pont Victoria here goes to the South Shore and is a pretty mediocre bridge for car traffic. But one lane could be turned into a fantastically flat and fast first choice for pedestrians and cyclists. It would reduce the burden on Jacques Cartier and feed pedestrians instead of cars into the redevelopment and Ram that's going in on the other side.
Times are changing for transportation and choices are being made. Over 200 kilometers of new bike lanes were announced by the Ville de Montreal just this year. The Ministère de Transport also just changed their name to the Ministère de Transport et de la Mobilité Durable. But tougher choices than a really hard to say new name already need to be made.
The ministry plans to replace the Ile-aux-Tot Bridge over the next decade. The plans include 2 new lanes for vehicles, 1 multi-use path, and 0 space for an extension of a Ram. People today are already unhappy with it, and it hasn't even been built yet. Can you imagine how bad things will be in 2100 when the new bridge is due for replacement? Bridges are a legacy where we make choices for our great-great-grandchildren. It's an enduring, big-ticket infrastructure item that sets the pace for 100 years. So what future is the Ministry of Transport choosing? And forget about the long-term choices, what about the short-term? The provincial section of the Mercier Bridge is in the planning stages for its eventual replacement. However, no timeline has been released. Is maintaining the car club status quo into the 2030s acceptable anymore? Or should the ministry live up to its new name, take action, and choose an alternative before then?
Here's a few options.
Negotiating with a railway company and funding a pedestrian addition to the neighbouring railway bridge, like was done here, is one option.
Building a standalone pedestrian bridge, like the one proposed between Ile-de-Serre and Verdun. Or, if these can't be done, give active transportation a lane on the bridge, as was done recently with the Brooklyn Bridge.
Because with the feds built out on one side and the city on the other, right now the ministry is making a choice. The status quo, which means that many Montrealers have no choice at all.